In this video, I'll be sharing everything I've uncovered about Chapter 4, Rosy Cheeks, Grey Hair, and exploring how it ties into the classic tale of Journey to the West. If you spot any inaccuracies or have additional insights, feel free to let me know, and sorry in advance for any mispronunciation. In Journey to the West, Tanzan and his disciples, Wukong, Pigsy, and Sandy, come across Pansy Ridge, where they encounter 7 spider spirits. These spiders invite the monk to their home and serve him a meal made from human flesh. As a devout monk who abstains from meat, Tanzan refuses and tries to leave, but the spiders get offended and tie him up. After tying up the monk, the spiders head to a nearby spring to bathe, planning to eat Tanzan as their meal afterwards. However, Sun Wukong sees the spiders and decides to steal all their clothes, as a means to delay them while he goes to save the monk. When Bajie heard the spiders were bathing, he transformed into a fish and slipped into the pool. Once inside, he revealed his true form, intending to attack the spiders. However, a few of them managed to escape and ensnare Bajie in their webs. They then fled to their brother, the 100-eyed demon. The spiders told the 100-eyed demon about their ordeal and begged him for revenge. In retaliation, the 100-eyed demon poisoned the tea served to Tanzan and his disciples. While Wukong saw through the poison and avoided it, the other 3 drank the poisoned tea. Enraged, Wukong fought against the 100-eyed demon and the remaining spiders. The 100-eyed demon, with his 1,000 eyes emitting a dazzling golden light to disorient his foes, caused Sun Wukong to retreat. Seeking assistance, Wukong turned to Bodhisattva Pilapo. She used an embroidery needle crafted from the eyes of her own son to subdue the 100-eyed demon. Bodhisattva Pilapo is a shapeshifter whose true form is a hen, while her son Maori is a rooster and star deity, considered one of the 28 constellations. Maori is depicted as a giant rooster around 6 to 7 feet tall. Maori is in fact the old Dawn Star constellation that was mentioned in Kangjin Loong's journal entry. Kangjin Loong's journal entry stated that Dawn Star went missing during a roll call in the Dome of Stars, and despite extensive inquiries, no one could locate him. The missing Dawn Star, Maori, and the Duskveil are all the same individuals. More on this later. The Scorpion Demoness, basically a female demon, is a demon from the Chinese novel Journey to the West. Her true form is a scorpion. When the monk and his disciples are about to leave the woman's kingdom, the Scorpion Demoness suddenly appears and abducts the monk to her cave. She tries to seduce and persuade the monk to marry her. Sun Wukong and Zhu Bajie fight the scorpion to save their master, but are held back by her venomous sting. Eventually, they seek help from Maori, who transforms into a giant rooster and kills the scorpion. This was an overview of the events that take place in Journey to the West and how they may relate to the characters we encounter in Chapter 4. Now coming back to the game itself, in Black Myth Wukong, the Venom Spider is the surviving spider demon from the original Journey to the West tale. It's unclear whether the 6 spider sisters are her biological daughters or descendants of the original spider demons. Part of me wants to believe that the 6th sister, the youngest one, is the daughter of the Venom Spider and Zhu Bajie. Given the timeline and aging issues, it does not seem likely, so I'm going to assume that the Venom Spider essentially adopted her sister's descendants. In the game's narrative, the Venom Spider along with the 6 sisters represents a reimagined version of the 7 spider demons from Journey to the West. In Chapter 4 of Black Myth Wukong, Rain Immortal, also known as Tai Shang Lao Jun, emerges as the true mastermind orchestrating the events from behind the scenes. Rain Immortal permits the 100-eyed demon to use heaven worm eggs to infect both Bodhisattva Pilapo and her son Maori. Additionally, Rain Immortal is involved in harvesting human and demon lives through the 100-eyed demon in the form of pills. That's right, pills. Chapter 4 is basically a giant pill farm for the gods. In Black Myth Wukong, the Bodhisattvas and gods, while appearing holy and righteous, are often the true instigators behind the events of the story. Their indifferences to the suffering of both people and demons reveals a darker side of their nature. This aligns with the game's title, Black Myth, suggesting a world devoid of traditional morality and kindness. In this setting, the gods' schemes and manipulations echo the cutthroat nature where power struggles and ruthless tactics overshadow any semblance of virtue. Now that you have a general overview of Chapter 4 and how it relates to Journey to the West, I will be covering the journal entries for the characters, bosses, and enemies we encounter throughout Chapter 4. In crimson embroidered crown, pure and refined, ascending to meet the immortal unconfined, revered in the vast skies far and wide, what foolish man would dare not abide? The newly appointed Dawnstar, who had previously served in the Hall of Incense, was now making his first tour of the Celestial Palace. Upon exiting the palace, he was greeted by the Crane Immortal, who took him on a grand tour. They visited the Celestial Gate, where he was introduced to the captains of the court on duty and the 4 heavenly kings. They continued to the 33 halls and the 72 palaces, paying their respects to the celestial beings along the way. The celestial beings treated them with the highest courtesy, which greatly pleased the newly appointed Constellation Officer. After the tour, the Crane Immortal prepared to personally escort the Dawnstar back to the Palace of Illumination. As they were on their way, the Dawnstar suddenly asked, "I wonder about the fate of my predecessor." The predecessor was the Duskveil, or Maori, aka the son of Bodhisattva Pilapo. Was he promoted or demoted? I would like to know how to conduct myself accordingly. The Crane Immortal smiled and replied, "He mingled too closely with the mortal realm, perhaps making friends among the mountains and wilds. Now having shed his celestial bonds, who can say where he revels in his newfound freedom?" The Dawnstar frowned and questioned, "I heard the Dome of Stars conducts roll calls daily. How could it be that the Constellation Officer left without anyone knowing?" The Crane Immortal replied, "If he hadn't left quietly, you wouldn't be here now." The Dawnstar seemed to understand and chose not to press the matter further. It appears that ones who had a connection with Wukong are being punished. Kangjin Loong, part of the 28 constellations, previously helped Wukong escape the golden symbols that Yellowbrow used, and Dawnstar, or Maori, helped Wukong with the Demoness Scorpion. When both Kangjin Loong and Dawnstar went missing, no one came to help them. A brief song stirs the valiant heart. Long crows pierce the night apart, leaping high then falling low, drifting like duckweed in the flow. He lay on the ground, bewildered by his sudden defeat. The once unremarkable Daoist-robed insect Guai, whom he had dismissed as insignificant, now stood over him with a smirk. As he saw the Guai holding a radiant golden hairpin, the realization hit him. He tried to speak but found himself unable to, the pain excruciating, as though his throat had been slit by the vile insect with the hairpin. Expecting to die, he closed his eyes, unable to bear the sight of that hideous face. Suddenly, someone turned him over and began applying a decoction to his wound. He could breathe again, but it brought him no relief. The Guai clicked its tongue in amazement. The medicine master provided is truly remarkable. It has completely mended the severed part. What a pity to use it on someone like you. He tried to ask a question, but the Guai cut him off. Don't rush. External medicine can't heal internal injuries. Besides, I have no intention of curing you. With a wave of his hand, the Guai summoned 2 fake Daoists in green robes who carried a jade box covered in brocade. The Guai extracted a golden cocoon from the box and said, "We mountain Guais are unworthy of this item. It's best to test it on you." Panic-stricken, he coughed up blood that splattered onto the golden cocoon. The cocoon cracked open upon contact with the blood, and a worm with a human head and a golden body emerged, quickly wriggling into the grass and disappearing. Unfazed, the Guai took out another golden cocoon from the box. Master was truly wise to prepare 2 golden cocoons. He attempted to struggle, but his body was tightly bound by cobwebs. The Guai ordered, "Pour it down his throat." The fake Daoists brought several buckets of water and forced his head back, pouring a foul-smelling concoction into his mouth. As he swallowed, he felt the liquid slide down his throat, and soon felt as if he were floating on clouds, his mind growing hazy. Apart from a lingering concern for his mother, he could hardly remember anything. He silently recited one last prayer, hoping that a glimmer of survival would be bestowed upon his mother. With the use of the golden cocoons, the 100-eyed demon corrupted the previous Dawnstar, aka Maori, the son of Bodhisattva Pilapo, and turned him into Duskveil. Now as for who the master is that gave the 100-eyed demon access to the golden cocoon, it's most probably the Crane Immortal. This isn't the only time the 100-eyed demon would attempt this, as it's explained in the journal entry for Buddha's right hand. The hand that plucked lotus from waters pristine, of the same species yet not from the same egg it seems. Who can discern right from left in life's uncertain scheme? In this tangled web, truth and illusion gleam. In ancient times, a Daoist brought a pair of enormous arms into the webbed hollow. The lesser Yaoguais, unfamiliar with their origin, could only surmise that such grand appendages must belong to a great master. The 100-eyed Daoist master placed 2 egg-like objects within the arms and instructed the Yaoguais to guard them with great diligence. These egg-like objects were the same golden cocoons that were used on Maori or Duskveil. Initially, the arms emitted a thick, foul-smelling fluid. Over time, the fluid dried, forming a thick blood membrane that encased the arms. As the years passed, something within the membrane began to wriggle, suggesting that whatever was inside was growing and eager to emerge. Exactly 10 years later, 2 insects emerged from the eggs. These creatures resembled bees, but had tails like hands, and their venomous spit was lethal to any bird or beast, and could wither any plant it touched. Notice how when we fight Duskveil, we see a similar thick blood liquid. Essentially, the Duskveil was a failed experiment. The 100-eyed Daoist master was overjoyed by the results and held a grand feast to celebrate. During the banquet, he recounted a tale to the violet spider. You may not know this, but I once attempted a similar project on Purple Cloud Mountain. Unfortunately, the celestial eggs failed to hatch as expected, and I faced severe reprimands from our master. However, this time I learned that the celestial eggs were not meant for lofty ascensions, but were ideal for creating Yaoguais. One of the insects had a left hand for a tail, and the other had a right hand. They enjoyed hanging upside down from the cave ceiling, using their tails to lure prey. When prey approached, they would clap their tails together, crushing the prey into a pulp, before lowering their heads to consume it whole. Later, the left-handed insect ventured into the mountains to practice, while the right-handed insect, which could no longer clap, preferred to guard narrow paths. There, it made full use of the terrain to capture and devour any intruders. Now, the journal entry here says that the lesser Yaoguais had no idea where the enormous hands came from, but judging by their form, they must have belonged to a great master. And the item that you get after defeating the boss has the following description. The very hand that once plucked lotus from pristine waters, now severed and lying about. Not knowing what use it may serve, it is advised to stow it for now. A bit of speculation here, but I believe that the 100-eyed demon killed Bodhisattva Pilapo, or at the very least severed her arms, and that is how he gained access to the golden hairpin, which was then used to harm the previous Dawn Star Constellation officer, Maori. Now you may be thinking, but how can a demon sever the hands of a Bodhisattva? It doesn't add up. Well, if you look back to chapter 2, the Yellow Wind Sage severed Bodhisattva Lingji's head, did he not? It's entirely possible that Pilapo is still alive. If Lingji can survive without his head, then Pilapo can most definitely survive without her arms. Tending the furnace, stoking the flame, making pills to immortality aspire. Countless eyes and countless schemes, one misstep and shatter all dreams. Will this work? Violet Spider lowered her head, not daring to look directly at 100-eyed Daoist Master. The master handed a needle to the old woman with a reassuring tone. With the remnants left by the monkey and this vessel of mine, you have nothing to worry about. If either fails, come to me and I will support you. He paused as if struck by a new thought, then added, should I intervene first, you'll never see that pig again. The old woman quickly took the needle, thanked him and left. As the door closed behind her, Supreme Celestial Inspector and Crane Immortal emerged from behind the screen. The Immortal cast an imposing gaze at the master. The 100-eyed Daoist master bowed respectfully and reported, with the pig in our grasp, the destined one will not cause any further trouble. The Crane Immortal remained aloof, sighing as he responded, all your schemes are under His Majesty's watchful eyes. His intervention has been withheld out of respect for Her Majesty. The master chuckled dryly and replied, Her Majesty's directive. They have profited too much. This time we must reclaim our principle and interest. The Crane Immortal dismissively said, once it's done, you will leave, but they must remain. Without showing any emotion, the master bowed deeply to the Immortal. The mighty Inspector, the Emperor's guard so grand. rides fiery wheels at the celestial gate to stand, upholding justice, silent and stern. With one steel whip, the souls burn. The Supreme Inspector is related to Wang Lin Guang from Journey to the West. He was the head of security for heaven. In the Celestial Court, it was a well-known fact among gods and Buddhas that Supreme Inspector was the Jade Emperor's most loyal enforcer. If his gaze was fixed upon someone, it spelled certain doom. Admiral Tian Peng, who was cast down to become a pig, served as a prime example. Once a prominent rising star, he vanished without a trace after the Supreme Inspector reported him. Initially, the Supreme Inspector did not have his current peculiar appearance. Though not as handsome as Tian Peng, he was at least presentable. Later, the Jade Emperor, in appreciation of the Inspector's impartial enforcements of his decrees, transformed the Inspector's head into the shape of his right hand, symbolizing that when the Inspector was present, it is as if the Jade Emperor himself was there. When deities encountered the Inspector, they respectfully greeted him and then quickly distanced themselves. They dared not engage in any high-spirited discussions in his presence, fearing that any mistake might be caught and reported. Although the Inspector had no close companions, he did have some interactions with an old god of a very high rank in the Celestial Court, aside from the Jade Emperor. Some immortals said that since the Inspector willingly took on such a significant role, he deserved to endure the solitude. Every advantage came with a disadvantage. Others argued that the Inspector accepted this unappealing position precisely because he preferred not to socialize, finding himself perfectly at ease and content in his role. Opinions were divided, and no consensus was reached. As for what the Inspector truly thought, no one knew. Born with a clumsy heart, trapped in life's advance and retreat, breaking precepts repeatedly, following nature, not the Buddha's feet. With rake and tusk, smashing fate, burrowing karma's weight, rolling in the muddy worlds, heedless of scorn or debate. In the highest heavens, above the jade pool, celestial maidens danced gracefully amidst swirling clouds and mist. Today marked the Queen Mother of the West's grand lotus viewing banquet. As Admiral Tian Peng approached the gate, he saw a tall, burly man being obstructed by a celestial maiden. "Admiral Curtain Raiser," she said with a polite but frosty formality. "Without a handwritten invitation from the Queen Mother, you cannot sit by the pool. If you don't mind, please take a seat in the side hall and enjoy some tea." The burly man complied, his eyes lingering on the main hall. Tian Peng, observing thus, shook his head with a faint smile, presenting his own invitation to the other maiden at the gate. He strode in with his head held high. The banquet was alive, with celestial officials exchanging toasts and laughter, filling the hall with an atmosphere of joy and revelry. Though Tian Peng, an admiral of the Celestial River, rarely attended such festivities, he mingled with ease, greeting everyone as if they were old friends, all while mindful not to overindulge in wine. Beside the Queen Mother, the god of longevity stroked his beard and remarked with a chuckle, "Such extravagance. I wonder how the peach banquet could possibly surpass this." A nearby constellation officer laughed. "Elder, there is no need for concern. The allure of those 9,000-year peaches is so irresistible that even a simple table set outside the celestial gate would attract dignitaries from all realms, noble or humble, eager to partake." A red-faced immortal sneered. "It's not the peaches they're after, but rather a chance to bow before the Jade Emperor and the three Supremes and worship the Western Buddhas. These gatherings are rare opportunities for them to curry favor and bask in divine presence." The Queen Mother spoke with solemn grace. "The peach banquet is no minor affair. Today's gathering is merely a rehearsal, a preparation for the rites and rituals that must be performed with precision and reverence." At her signal, the Lord of Luna clapped his hands, summoning a group of maidens in white. They took their places by the jade pool and began to play instruments, sing, and dance. Among them, one dancer stood out with exceptional grace, her silver hair and cloud-like dress captivating all who watched. Tian Peng enthralled, watching her performance with rapt attention. A celestial maiden in a violet gauze dress approached, offering him an exquisite cup of wine. "Admiral," she said softly. Lost in the admiration of the dancer, Tian Peng took the cup absent-mindedly, his gaze never leaving the graceful dancer's movements. After the dance concluded, Tian Peng regained senses. He rose up to toast the Queen Mother, yet the queue was long. By the time he reached the end of it, he found himself already outside the gate. Suddenly, he heard someone shout, "Shoes! His shoes!" Looking over, he saw two celestial officers struggling to support a drunken monkey as they hurried past. Tian Ping thought to himself, when will I ever get to be as carefree and drunk as the monkey? Zhu Bajie, or Pigsy, was originally Marshal Tian Ping in the heaven. However, after getting drunk and flirting with the moon goddess, he was punished by the Jade Emperor and banished to the mortal world. I'll cover more about Pigsy and his relationship with the Violet Spider in the ending cutscene for this chapter. Gaping mouth, round belly, born incomplete, bulky form, craving and chasing tasty treats. Greedy for flavors, it longs for delight. Wagging its tongue, it speaks in spite. During a springtime banquet at the Webbed Hollow, a young Guai from Mount Wushan, after presenting his gift, saw the ladies enjoying the festivities and decided to join the other Guais in the cave for drinks and revelry. As the evening progressed, the Guais began to joke around. A pig Guai expressed a wish to live in the luxurious cave where banquets were held for every occasion, unlike his own place where the lady was too strict to allow any fun. An insect Guai responded that while their banquets were frequent, they didn't compare to the celestial court's grandeur. However, their second lady ran profitable ventures in the mortal world, ensuring they weren't lacking in silver. Another pig Guai admired the beauty of their ladies and wondered which celestial mountain would be lucky enough to have them start new families. The insect Guai explained that their ladies could not leave the cave, and only accepted suitors who married into the family. Just then chaos erupted. A pig Guai burst in reporting that a quarrel had broken out among the ladies. The mistress had fought with their lady over a maid's remark and had even destroyed the gift brought by the Wushan Guai. Startled, the Guais quickly wrapped some food in lotus leaves as an apology and sent it to the pig Guais. They hurried to manage the situation, while one of them remarked that the mistress was known for her muddle-headed behavior, leading to frequent disturbances. Once she rode the cloud chariot to the high terrace. Now she dwells in a secluded cave by the mountain base. The breeze by the frail bridge chills her delicate frame. Spring arrives, another bridal gown newly made. Arriving at a forest village, Tong Monk sought alms for food and was invited into a hut by several women. However, once inside, he was unexpectedly captured, bound, and hung from a beam. Meanwhile, son Wukong, while climbing trees, noticed a glimmer of light and realized his master was in trouble with Yao Guais. He discovered that the light came from a celestial bathing spring, overtaken by 7 spider Guais. Knowing they bathed frequently, he transformed into an eagle and stole their clothes. Bajie, discovering the woman's clothes and learning about the 7 Guais bathing, eagerly jumped into the spring, disguising himself as a catfish Guai. The spiders tried to catch him, yet none of them succeeded. Recognizing one of them as an old acquaintance, Bajie mischievously swam around her legs. He floated and dived around her until he was out of breath and hazed. The spiders retreated to their cave and sent their adopted sons to guard it, while they sought help at the Temple of Yellow Flowers. There, the temple master, the 100-eyed demon, who had trained with the spiders, decided to exact revenge on Tan Monk and his fellowship by preparing 4 cups of poison tea. Son Wukong, however, saw through the deception and defeated the spider Guais, forcing them to flee. He then ordered Bajie to take care of the remaining spiders. Bajie complied, using his rake to defeat each spider, but spared the last one, remembering their earlier encounter in the water. With a final warning, he allowed her to escape. The path home is covered in green moss. Peach blossoms begin to bloom across. How tender and gentle her caring affection, among sisters a loving connection. The eldest sister was gentle and serene, nurturing her younger siblings with a motherly touch. She meticulously handled every detail of their daily lives, from managing the cave's provisions to addressing every dispute and concern that arose. Her days were filled with tasks, from overseeing clothing to resolving issues brought by courier Yao Guais, who constantly updated her on matters like arguments between her sisters, extra help needed for weavers, or injuries requiring her attention. One day, her mother summoned her to her side. As she entered the hut, she saw her mother peacefully admiring the flowers beneath a tree. Her mother invited her over with a gesture, saying, "The flowers here are more beautiful than those in the upper realms." Outside, lesser Yao Guais waited her decisions on various matters. The elder sister asked, "Mother, do you have any instructions for me?" Her mother, holding her hand gently, replied, "I simply want you to join me in appreciating these flowers. I worry that all your responsibilities might be wearing you out." The eldest sister glanced at her mother and was transported back to their shared moments many years ago, when her mother had held her hand as they enjoyed the beauty of peach blossoms. The flowers were beautiful then, and so was her mother. With powdered face and hair in a twist, a slender waist adorned with jade amist, as charming as a maiden from the skies, yet most formidable when she vies. The second daughter, raised as a boy from a young age, managed the finances and trade for the cave with skill and dedication. Her straightforward and generous nature made her the most involved with the stewards outside the mountain and the lesser Yaoguais in the village of Langzi. Due to her numerous responsibilities, the Yaoguais had set times to report to her and offer their tributes. Though they respected and feared her, many believed that she might one day become the lady of the cave, which caused unease among the 4 scorpion princes residing there. Gossip swirled around the idea that anyone marrying into the Zhu family could become a lord by association. Unconcerned with such rumors, the second sister focused on the scorpions who were most helpful to her. Recently, she had acquired a celestial vine seed, which she planted in her private courtyard and entrusted the eldest scorpion prince for its care. Delighted by this responsibility, the eldest scorpion prince mistakenly believed that her gesture indicated romantic interest in him. Seeking to capitalize on this opportunity, he approached the 100-eyed Daoist master for help with matchmaking. The master, amused, advised against seeking external assistance. He suggested that a woman with such a strong will, like the second sister, would be more likely to reject him if he relied on someone else to propose. The prince was encouraged to devise his own plan. Back in the cave, the eldest scorpion prince spent his time pondering over the celestial vine, trying to figure out a way to win her heart, but struggled to come up with a successful strategy. In seclusion for 100 springs, truth and falsehood the mountain brings. Rosy face turns into grey hair, love stories seldom end fair. The third daughter, known for her grace and gentleness, had a passion for reading and writing. As her younger sisters were still naive and her 2 elder sisters were always busy, she devoted herself to needlework, eventually becoming the family's most skilled weaver. Her weaving patterns were utilized in the fabric shop run by her second sister outside, and she trained the weavers in the cave. Despite her kind-hearted nature, she found it challenging to assert authority over the Yaoguais. To address this, the 5th sister became her assistant. While the 3rd sister focused on teaching weaving techniques, the 5th sister enforced discipline with a ruler. Any particularly unruly weaver would be reported to the 2nd sister, who would then seal the offender in a cocoon for use as food. Since their childhood, the 5th sister had accompanied the 3rd sister, filling the role of a lively counterpart to her more reserved sibling. Their playful bickering and quarrels made their days more enjoyable. The 3rd sister was also an avid reader of strange moral anecdotes, which fascinated her with their romantic scenes. However, her wisdom prevented her from pursuing any romantic scholars. She was well aware that many Yaoguais in those tales met tragic fates. Sword raised to the azure sky, enemy blood stains the black robe high. Fortunate to be a maiden fair, outshining heroes with grace and flair. In the past, the Scorpionlord sought refuge for his 4 sons at the Temple of Yellow Flowers. The 100-eyed Daoist master, eager to exploit their venomous power, promised to arrange marriages between the young spider Yaoguais and the Scorpion princes. Thus, he summoned the Violet Spider and her 4 daughters to meet the princes. Once everyone was seated, the Daoist master asked the princes to introduce themselves. The eldest prince stood up, proudly declaring, "My skills were personally taught by my father. Among my brothers, I am the best bachelor. If all the sisters wish to marry me, don't let it cause any discord." The sisters frowned at his boastfulness, prompting the second prince to quickly intervene. He said, "Sisters, please forgive my brother's recklessness. Strong as he is, which I admit, I am no less capable. If you choose me as your husband, I will expand our domain and make it prosperous." The Daoist master, displeased with the second prince's ambitions, noted that the sisters were still unsure. They turned their attention to the third prince, who, feeling the pressure, said hesitantly, "My brothers are all skilled, and my younger brother is also exceptional. Sisters, please consider carefully before making a choice." The fourth prince, critical of his third brother's lack of confidence, said, "My third brother is a bit awkward in temperament. I hope you don't mind, although I am younger, my future is promising. Choosing me is choosing the future." After hearing the princes, the Daoist master asked the Zhu family daughters for their opinions. The eldest sister replied gently, "With many sisters to look after and our mother's illness, I cannot lay down this burden and let my sisters suffer. My marriage can wait a few more years." The scorpions shook their heads, expressing regret. The second sister laughed flirtatiously and said, "I am busy managing the family business alone, with many financial gaps to fill. If any of you are willing to help bridge these gaps, I might consider marriage." The Scorpionlord's mountain had long since fallen into ruin, with no wealth to speak of, so the second sister's words effectively ended the conversation. The third sister, holding a fan, said, "I wish to marry someone with whom I can live in harmony. I love the poetry of Lo Yin. Have any of you read his works?" It's likely that the four princes didn't even know what poetry was, let alone who Lo Yin was. Consequently, everyone pinned their hopes on the fourth sister. Sitting at the end, the fourth sister hummed softly out of boredom before speaking. "My sisters, you were too polite, speaking so tactfully that they probably didn't even understand. The so-called meeting is just a scheme against us. We would end up with no gain while they take our dowries and positions in our cave. How dare they consider us as the ones to be taken advantage of? They call themselves princes, yet none of them are noble. If they truly had any skills, why not earn their own fortunes instead of showing off and making fools of themselves here?" After the fourth sister's outburst, the conversation at the table shifted to criticizing her. Now, most of what I'm about to say is based on speculation. It's clear that the Destined One we play as is part of an ongoing cycle of reincarnation, rather than being the original. If you don't achieve the secret ending, the current Destined One will inherit Wukong's golden headband, and the cycle will continue indefinitely. The golden headband symbolizes the unbroken chain of reincarnations. However, to escape the perpetual cycle, the player must unlock the secret ending. This ending frees the Destined One from the golden headband's constraints, breaking the cycle and offering a resolution to the ongoing reincarnations. In Chapter 4, a notable cutscene features two lanterns shouting "Daoist, or Big Day," in the presence of the fourth sister and the Destined One. This scene recurs later when Pigsy is led into the courtyard for his wedding day, suggesting that the lanterns recognize the significance of the events and the characters involved. The repetition of the lantern's behavior hints that the Destined One may hold a groom-like status within the narrative. In the same cutscene, the fourth sister informs the Destined One that there is great treasure beyond the gate, and invites us to help ourselves. There we find 5 chests filled with valuable items. It's possible that this loot could be the fourth sister's dowry, and if you don't know what a dowry is, it's money brought by a bride to their husband on their marriage. During her quest to remove the talismans, the fourth sister attempts to tear off the first talisman, but ends up hurting herself in the process. The purple talismans were placed by the Celestial Court to confine the spiders for their own nefarious purposes. After the fight with the Supreme Inspector, the Crane Immortal appears and accuses us of meddling with the Celestial Court's affairs, and giving false hope to a girl who knows no bounds. The Crane Immortal suggests he might transform her into a golden pill to keep her safe for us, saying, "Think about her, won't you? Should you feel like stirring trouble in your next life." So basically, the Crane Immortal kidnapped her girlfriend and turned her into a pill, as a reminder to not cause any trouble in future lives, reinforcing the idea that we are a reincarnation of the previous Destined One. Orioles are charming, swallows love to play, sisters close in bond, let them not be swayed by worldly fray. The fifth daughter, renowned for her stunning beauty, decides to have some fun one stormy night. As she accompanied her second sister in the village overseeing the work of lesser Yaoguais, she noticed a traveling scholar seeking refuge from the rain. With a playful spirit, she decided to prank him. The scholar, anxious about his bookcase getting wet, rushed into an empty village house without noticing the Yaoguais lurking around. He hurriedly bolted the door and lit a lamp oil as the storm began to rage outside. As he looked out at the pouring rain, he felt inspired and recited a poem aloud. Zhu's land in turmoil, the court in disarray. Like thunderclaps in clear skies, they sway. Just then, a thunderclap roared, and the scholar thought he saw the window shake. Dismissing it as a trick of the wind, he continued his poem feeling invigorated. When he finished, he heard a knock on the door. Glancing at the window lattice and seeing it move again, he assumed it was just a storm and shut the window. As he went to answer the door, he was shocked to find not the beautiful Yaoguai he anticipated, but a ghost with wild hair and pus-filled eyes. Screaming in terror, the scholar pushed past the ghost and fled the house. Meanwhile, the fifth daughter, who had been playfully leaning against the wall, lost her balance and stumbled into the house. She was furious at the scholar's rudeness and noticed an old bronze mirror on the desk. To her surprise, the storm had washed away her makeup, leaving her face a patchwork of colors, with wet hair making her look genuinely terrifying. Even she couldn't help but laugh at the sight. In hidden groves, a home appears. Laughter fills the path with flowers near. Girl chases the butterflies in flight, as rumors fade like shooting stars in the night. In the webbed hollow, there were no children of the same age as the sixth sister. She usually spent her time with her elder sisters, who were all very nice to her. Only the fourth sister would strictly supervise her training. Sometimes when she trained diligently, the fourth sister would take her to the mountaintop to gaze at the scenery outside and tell her stories about the world beyond the mountains. Although she enjoyed following her fourth sister, the fourth sister often went into the mountains to investigate secrets unknown to her. Claiming it was dangerous, she refused to take her along, which left the sixth sister feeling bored. One day, a flower viewing banquet was held in the mountains, and the lesser Yaoguais from Mount Wushan came to deliver gifts. As usual, after completing their tasks, they were invited to stay and drink. The elder sisters were busy entertaining guests and taking care of their mother, so the sixth sister wandered off on her own. The steward Guai, unable to refuse her, had to accompany her around the cave for a while. Two drunk pig Guais saw the sixth sister and pointed at her, saying, "Is that the one?" The other pig Guai replied, "Yes, that's the one." Feeling annoyed by their comments, the sixth sister retorted, "Why are you pig Guais pointing at me? Where are your manners? And what did you mean for this and that?" The steward Guai tried to signal the pig Guais to shut up, but they continued, "Little girl, let us tell you a secret that everyone knows but you." The steward Guai quickly tried to intervene, but the sixth sister earnestly said, "Go ahead." The two pig Guais laughed and said, "Your father is a pig just like us. You are a relative of our old pig family." Contrary to their expectations, the little girl didn't burst in anger or throw a tantrum. Instead, she pouted and spoke with a dismissive tone, saying, "You must be attempting to establish a connection with me because you lack skill in your craft and seek to exploit me. The one my mother chose would never be someone as despicable as you." Hearing this, the pig Guais felt embarrassed and never dared to joke at her again. Schemes and plots hard to outsmart, impulsive nature a straightforward heart. He should thank his twin blades. One cuts through folly, one has the truth displayed. The purple-faced Daoist master asked with a gentle smile, "How long have you been in this temple?" I do not know. I can only remember that the thunder has struck the hall over 100 times. Then it has been over 100 years. Master, I have been here a long time, yet you have not taught me any skills. Could you perhaps teach me a few moves today? You wish to learn my skills? Since the day I called you master, yes. Your foundation is solid, and your energy channels are harmonized. You have already achieved a high level. I fear that learning my skills might not benefit you much. The Venom Daoist tenses up, visibly on guard. Skills I can offer no more, but I can provide some unique methods of practice. These methods are beyond the ordinary and demand a strong will to succeed. If you are not deterred by hardship, I can let you try. What kind of unique methods? Without your willingness to learn, I cannot tell you that. The Venom Daoist ponders deeply, struggling with the decision. It is a path trodden by many of my disciples. If you come here, attempt nothing, and achieve nothing, would it not be a journey in vain? The Venom Daoist recalls his brother's instructions and asks, what can this method achieve? It will refine your body, elevate your divine skills, and make the path to ascension much easier. Is it truly so profound? If you find it unhelpful, you can stop at any time. I am ready to follow your instructions, Master. Come with me. The Venom Daoist glances at the stone wall one last time before following the Master. Now, similar to the green-capped martialist from Chapter 3, the Venom Daoist has been sent by Erlang Shen to test our worthiness. When we first encounter the Cocoon, you notice the Venom Daoist saying, "Surely he didn't send anyone to any better place than where I am," hinting at the others, White-clad Noble, Yellow Squire, and Green-capped Martialist, who were also sent by Erlang to test us. Once we break the Cocoon, the Venom Daoist mentions, "You're here at last. By my brother's words, I will first test your worth." In the second encounter, he mentions, "I stepped into the sack for nothing but your sake," possibly referring to the 100 years that passed as he waited for us to come. During the fight, the boss mentions, "I had to put myself in there to figure out all the warped roots of the many legs." I believe he's referring to him spying on the 100-eyed Daoist. Once we transition the Venom Daoist to phase 2, he states, "I see now, there's never ascension from those sacks. Worthless limbs, be gone. The old Daoist fooled me. My challenge was a delusion. Forget it." I believe the purple-faced Daoist, the 100-eyed demon, is the one responsible for the additional arms that the Venom Daoist gains. And the Venom Daoist probably played along with the training provided by the 100-eyed Daoist in order to spy on him for Erlang Shen. After his defeat, he instructs us to find the needle on Purple Cloud Mountain, similar to what the white-clad noble, yellow-robed squire, and green-capped martialist did. The needle in turn significantly eased the fight against the 100-eyed demon. Tearful eyes reflect tearful eyes. Broken hearts echo broken cries. The world harbors the cold and sly, yet spares the soul in serpent's guise. The Jade Emperor sits on his grand throne surrounded by celestial officials. Hong Yi stands among the immortals and sees Tai Bai Jingshi escorting a distinguished officer. Tai Bai Jingshi is a god and an envoy of the Jade Emperor. The officer being escorted wears a crown of 5 peaks, holds a landscape engraved tablet, and his robe sparkles with the light of 7 stars. The pleasant music of 8 jade rings gently accompanies his steps. "Your Majesty, I have brought the son of Bodhisattva Pilapo from the Purple Cloud Mountain as commanded. Let the celestial official come forward. I appoint you as the Dawn Star, ranking among the 28 constellations. You are granted residence in the Palace of Illumination. Remember to be diligent in your duties and conduct your patrols on time." The newly appointed Dawnstar bows deeply, his face a mix of pride and gratitude. The Crane Immortal and the Supreme Celestial Inspector will escort you to your post. I also bestow upon you 2 bottles of Imperial wine and 10 golden flowers. As the Immortals offer their congratulations, the camera shifts to Hong Yi, who observes quietly from the side. She is slightly older than the Dawnstar and has known him for years, due to their family's close ties. Watching him now, she feels a pang of nostalgia and pride, believing in the vast potential of his future. The camera captures Dawnstar as he warmly greets and bids farewell to others in front of the hall. His demeanor is exuberant, yet he does not acknowledge Hong Yi. With a quiet sigh, Hong Yi turns and begins to walk slowly out of the hall, her figure gradually fading from view. In the narrative, the Destined One encounters Hong Yi at Purple Cloud Mountain, who is mourning her husband, killed by wicked insects. She seeks a keepsake from his remains but is hindered by the Scorpionlord. Next, in Petalfall Hamlet, Daoist Mi informs the Destined One about a dangerous Amourworm whose eggs grant power but cause suffering when the larvae hatch. Daoist Mi's disciples are afflicted, and he requests the Destined One to end their suffering. After defeating the afflicted disciples, the Destined One finds a violet hail. Daoist Mi, excited by this discovery, asks to study it but ultimately consumes it for power. Upon defeating Daoist Mi again, he returns to his normal form. Hong Yi then appears, reflecting on the self-destructive nature of mortals. She retrieves the violet hail from Daoist Mi and gives it to the Destined One, acknowledging our unique strength. She then requests the Destined One to defeat the Duskveil, as she is unable to bring herself to do so. After we defeat the Duskveil, Hong Yi reveals that her journey began at Mount Li, driven by a quest to uncover the secrets of the valley. She confesses that her inability to confront the Duskveil was due to her connection with his mother. She is taken aback to discover that the Destined One possesses the Bloodstained Needle. Now keep in mind that we retrieved the Bloodstained Needle from the Violet Spider after defeating her, and the Violet Spider obtained the needle from the 100-Eyed Demon. And I believe the 100-Eyed Demon obtained the needle after severing Bodhisattva Pilapo's hands, or possibly even killing her. But ultimately, the needle ends up with us, and as a gesture of gratitude, Hong Yi restores the Bloodstained Needle to its original power, and that is how we get the Weaver's Needle. The description for the Weaver's Needle reads, "This vessel of mine is forged not of iron or steel, nor of gold, but solely from the eyes of my son." In bounds of deity's abode, sorrow's wine I sip. Golden armor, golden claw, poison's grip. Cockerels crow, blood tears, body near to break. My love wanes and waxes like the moon, yet burns eternal like the sun's embrace. The Mountain of Venom, neighboring the West Liang Kingdom of Women, inherited its tradition of female supremacy. The mountain was ruled by a scorpion queen, a Guai of desire, renowned for her enchanting beauty. She practiced the Tao of concentration, excelling in bedroom arts and matters of pleasure, thus having countless partners for her practice. Among these partners was a male scorpion, adorned in golden armor and claws, whose strong build earned him the queen's favor. Together, they had a brood of scorpion offsprings, the Scorpion Princes. However, none of the offsprings were female, which led to her to lose interest in passing them her skills. Consequently, the golden armored male scorpion also fell out of favor. Seeing that the queen no longer sought his company, the male scorpion, with high self-esteem, took his children and moved outside the mountain, severing ties with her. Later, when the journeyers passed through the Kingdom of Women, the Scorpion Queen, true to her nature as a Guai of desire, kidnapped Tong Monk, which cost her her life when Sun Wukong summoned the Dawnstar, aka Maori, whose crow killed her instantly. Her maidens, the captives from the Kingdom of Women held in her cave, dispersed, taking all the treasures with them. Still seething with anger, Sun Wukong set the place ablaze, turning everything to ashes. Sensing the fire, the male scorpion outside the mountain rushed to the scene, only to find his former love stripped of her clothes, her tail severed, and her body reduced to a bloody pulp, dead at the foot of the slope. After much inquiry, he learned that it was the Dawnstar of Constellation Mao that had killed her. With this knowledge, he vowed to avenge her. Fortunately, the Guai of Desire had imparted some techniques to him. He hence settled in the Pipa cave, rebuilding her force and dedicating himself to practice. However, being male, he struggled to achieve great success, leading to the decline of Mountain of Venom's reputation. Upon learning that Webbed Hollow was the premier place for insect Guais to practice, he took his sons and sought refuge there. The Scorpionlord is the husband of the Scorpion Demoness. The Scorpion Demoness I mentioned earlier, who captured Tanzan and tried to seduce him to marry her. Maori, aka Dawnstar, aka Duskveil, was the one responsible for the Scorpion Demoness's defeat. Hence why the Scorpionlord is seeking revenge against his wife's killer. When we kill the Scorpionlord, he says, "My revenge. I can no longer." This is why when you engage the Duskveil without killing the Scorpionlord, he shows up to assist us and take revenge for his wife. Silent, it hides with venomous claws, barbed hooks laced with deadly flaws. It arrives with a fierce, bold show, but in defeat it tucks tail and goes. The four sons of the Scorpion House often secretly inquired about each other's recent activities. This was not out of brotherly affection, but rather due to a competitive spirit, fearing that one of them might be chosen by one of the sisters in the cave before the others. Not only did they spy on each other's whereabouts, but they also felt compelled to comment on them afterward. If they heard that a brother had achieved something recently, they would make sarcastic remarks and express jealousy. Conversely, if a brother had made a mistake, they would mock and ridicule him, taking pleasure in his misfortune. Confused by such behavior, the lesser Yaoguais in the cave approached Commander Beetle to seek an explanation. Commander Beetle explained, "Their fear isn't about failing to marry a lady, it's that their brother's promotion will cut into their own benefits." Hearing this, the lesser Yaoguais were even more perplexed. Commander Beetle continued, "The 100-eyed Daoist master will not permit the Scorpion family to amass excessive power. Thus, if one of the four brothers ascends to the position of prince consort, the prospects for the others inevitably wane. This principle extends to the official roles within the cave. Take Scorpion Eldest for instance. Having gained the favor of the second madam, he faces the most exclusion from his brothers. But the eldest one is indeed more capable, while the others are not as competent," one lesser Yaoguai chimed in. "Exactly, because he has more skills. His brothers only talk behind his back and don't dare to confront him directly. Were it someone less skilled, it might not be the same." In empty mountains, falling blossoms sound. A flute's soft notes reveal homes around. Wearing masks that obscure false and true, they borrow forms to seek Cinnabar's hue. Long ago, a young man ventured alone to Webbed Ridge, seeking vengeance. However, he was captured by Yaoguais and endured many hardships in their lair before narrowly escaping. Upon his return to the kingdom of Zuzi, numerous weavers approached him, hoping he would lead them to the estate of Zhu on the ridge to find the legendary Jade Shuttle. The young man, overwhelmed, shut his doors to visitors, but his mother couldn't understand his reluctance and pressured him to lead the weavers to the ridge, to slay the Yahu Guais and rescue his father. Yet, human nature is unpredictable, and the weavers, each with their own agendas, failed to unite in the face of danger. They quarreled incessantly and were ultimately wiped out by a giant green spider in the estate. The young man, cowering in fear, was shocked to see the spider transform into the green-clad maiden he had once encountered in the cave. Disillusioned with humanity, he tearfully begged the fairy to let him stay on the ridge and cultivate. The green-clad maiden scolded him harshly and expelled him from the estate. The young man wandered to an abandoned village on the ridge. The insect Guais, having heard of his plight, took pity on him. A Dragonfly Guai introduced him to her master, the 100-eyed Daoist master at the Temple of Yellow Flowers. At the temple, all the Daoists wore stone masks. The Daoist master told the young man that to achieve the Dao, he must sever all worldly ties and don a stone mask to cut off his mortal connections. The young man hesitated and wandered around the temple. Unexpectedly, an elderly woman in red arrived with a group of beautiful maidens, including the green-clad maiden and the girl in yellow. Later, the temple hosted a banquet for the maidens. The young man, spying from the side, saw the table laden with dishes: human oil stir-fried, fresh human meat cooked and roasted, tofu blocks made from human brains, and meat buns filled with human flesh. The stench was nauseating, and he could only watch as the Yahu Guais feasted on humans. The Daoist master, noticing his shock, remarked indifferently, "It is in a Yahu Guai's nature to eat humans. Mortal lives are short. Even if we consume them, it only shortens their lifespans by a few decades, a mere blink of an eye." That night, the young man felt an overwhelming sense of loneliness. Under the moonlight, he played a tune from his homeland, feeling utterly lost. He realized that if he didn't become a Yahu Guai, he might be eaten by his fellow disciples. Reflecting deeply, he questioned how he ended up in such a predicament. After a long night of tears, he resolved to become a disciple and pursue the Tao. Since he couldn't change his fate, he decided to go with it. Determined, he asked his master for the quickest path to becoming a Yahu Guai. The master told him, "In Purple Cloud Mountain, there is a rare insect called the Amourworm. Consuming its eggs will allow you to ascend and become a Yahu Guai." In the celestial garden, rare seeds grow by the purifying spring with an immortal glow. Transformed in the lower realm, forms unique, such path to Tao, refined and sleek. In ancient times, someone cast 2 celestial eggs from Mount Kunlun into a blessed land on earth. However, the will of the mortal realm was not as abundant as that of the celestial realm. As a result, the celestial eggs failed to fully nurture and lost many of their wondrous abilities, taking on vastly different forms. One of these celestial eggs was used to redeem the guilty, while the other was hidden away by someone with ulterior motives. From this hidden egg, various creatures emerged, and it came to be known as the Elder Amourworm. Every few days, the Elder Amourworm would produce insect eggs that resembled blood sacs. If these eggs were ingested by a living being, the larvae would devour their internal organs. Depending on the innate differences of the larvae, the host would undergo a transformation, turning into one of many types of insects. If the eggs of the Elder Amourworm were not ingested, they would naturally hatch into ordinary Amourworm. These ordinary Amourworm would spin silk to create cocoons, which they used to trap their prey. The cocoons contained potent toxins that caused the trapped creatures to experience a sensation of flying in the wind, as if floating on clouds instead of feeling suffocated. However, prolonged exposure to these toxins led to abnormal changes in their bodies over time. Some practitioners attempted to use this method to temper their bodies and enhance their powers. However, it was ultimately considered a deviant practice that easily led to a loss of sanity. Since the celestial egg entered the mortal world, many have fallen victim to its poison. The Amourworm, despite its terrifying appearance, is not adept at combat. Aside from spewing filth from its mouth, it possesses no remarkable abilities. However, its continued existence and proliferation in the world suggest that it must provide some unknown benefits to certain individuals. When the victory comes, it flies low, and when the power is exhausted, it flees far away. Work hard and wash away the dye, and use the power to soar into the sky. A young man once lived in the webbed hollow. You may wonder how he found himself living among the Yao Guais. The tale began in the kingdom of Zuzi, where he was born into a family of weavers, their craft passed down through generations. One day, his father left home in search of a jade shuttle, but never returned. His mother searched for him, only to be told he had abandoned them to marry into the Zhu family. Consumed by grief and convinced that a Yao Guai had ensnared her husband, she wept day after day. Thus, in his boyhood, the son vowed to slay the Yao Guais and avenge his father. Years later, he heard merchants speak of the Zhu's estate on the Webbed Ridge, home to women of unearthly beauty. He ventured there alone to exact vengeance. But as soon as he entered the mountains, lesser Yao Guais captured him. Terrified he was before a little girl in yellow rescued him by commanding the Yao Guais to stop. The girl, barely 10, had a sweet rosy face, hardly an evil Yao Guai as he imagined. The young man was at a loss. To his surprise, the young girl, lonely with few companions her age, brought him to the Webbed Hollow to play. He stayed, and she visited often to lift her spirits. Conflicted, he spent nights vowing by lamplight to slay the Yao Guais and avenge his father come morning. One night, a small wasp flew in and heard his oath, but he paid it no mind. The next day, the girl didn't come. Instead, a woman in green, adorned with an elaborate bun possessing a fierce yet beautiful face, arrived with an entourage of insect guards. Among them was a wasp Yao Guai who, with practiced ease, deftly searched the young man's trunk, pulling out his hidden stash of travel money and the dagger intended for murder, hidden within his porcelain pillow. Before relaying his nightly vow of vengeance to its mistress, the green-clad woman addressed the young man. "No mortal shall reside in Webbed Hollow. Yet we spared you to be a companion for my younger sister, but in turn you plot to harm her, and you shall be punished for this. That being said, your quest for vengeance is understandable, which is why I shall leave your fate to the Bone Vaults." At her command, the guards seized him, casting him into the abyss, his fate uncertain in the darkness below. Twisted in form, it charges like a gale. With feet unfurled, it strikes a deadly trail. Beware its breath, the venomous embrace. In narrow bounds, seek a wider space. In the bygone days, a young man embarked on a journey to the Webbed Hollow, seeking vengeance. However, his quest took a dark turn when he was captured by Yao Guais and thrown into the Bone Vaults. Falling into a deep pit, he landed in a lair of large insects. Despite suffering a broken leg, he managed to survive. As he looked around, all he could see were skeletons and remains, filling him with despair. In the midst of his despair, he felt a sharp pain in his leg. A massive centipede as long as a person had bitten him and torn off a piece of his flesh to devour. Filled with terror, the young man instinctively grabbed a stone and viciously crushed the centipede until it burst apart. Only then did he realize that the stone he used was a human skull, which he quickly discarded. To his surprise, he noticed that the pain in his injured leg had subsided. Curious, he applied some of the centipede's pus to a scrapped arm, and the pain diminished, likely due to the numbing effect of the venom. This revelation sparked an idea in his mind. He tore strong silk threads from the cocoon surrounding the pit and found 2 leg bones to serve as support for his broken leg. Exhausted from the ordeal, he rested, but soon heard rustling sounds around him. He searched for the source of the noise, but it abruptly ceased. Suddenly, a giant white ball descended from above, bouncing several times before unfurling into a massive centipede, hundreds of times larger than the first one. Swiftly, the young man curled himself into a ball, mimicking the centipede's movement to confuse the colossal creature. At that moment, more objects fell into the pit, empty skins and remains. From them emerged a swarm of smaller centipedes, feasting on the discarded scraps. They passed by the young man, mistaking him for one of their own. Realizing thus, he began to imitate their behavior, observing their habits and assimilating into their society. After 10 days, he finally managed to escape the Webbed Hollow. Basking in the daylight, he came to understand that dwelling on the past would not allow him to live a fulfilling life. Returning to his hometown, he sought to lead a peaceful existence. However, the weavers, aware of his visit to Zhu's estate, gathered at the doorstep, demanding that he retrieve treasures from the estate. Forced to hide from them, he found no respite from the turmoil that surrounded him. By rocks a living spring does flow, glistening clear, glitters with glow. In its charm a frog lord does dwell, frog's venom both sweet and foul. Continuing from the previous story, the Daoist was rescued from the cold pond by monks who carried him into the mountains. He initially expected them to take him to a temple for healing, but to his surprise they threw him into a dungeon. In the dungeon, he endured beguiling chants, suffered from red eyes, and narrowly escaped death multiple times. Despite the hardships, his martial skills improved significantly, which he considered a fortunate turn of events. When he finally returned to the original spot, the frog was nowhere to be found. He left the New West and continued his journey. One sunny day, the Daoist arrived at a ridge covered in lush greenery, with a few thatched huts indicating habitation. Seeking a place to rest, he stepped into a large courtyard, but accidentally fell into a hole. Inside, he found layers of spiderwebs and insect guais everywhere. Fortunately, he was no longer as helpless as before, and managed to navigate deeper into the cave. The tadpoles he had been nurturing in his gourd suddenly became lively. He squeezed through a stone crevice and saw a large crimson-skinned frog occupying a natural spring, with insect guais keeping their distance. Drawing his sword, he attacked the frog. They fought fiercely in the water, one emitting crackling electricity, the other thrashing its limbs powerfully. As they reached a stalemate, the frog opened its mouth and extended a left hand from within, striking the Daoist's face and sending him back. The frog then tilted its head, and the Daoist, having learned his lesson, dared not approach. The frog spewed poisonous water, which spread and contaminated the entire pond. The Daoist hadn't anticipated this ability, and lacking any antidote, hurriedly retreated through the stone crevice. As he did, he heard a female voice behind him. "Daoist, why aren't you practicing your swordsmanship at the temple? Are you here to seek death?" Poisoned and unable to respond, he collapsed into the muddy pond. In his hazy state, he heard the woman call for help. "Quick, carry him back to the temple. We can't let him die here." It would be hard to explain. In robes concealed, a Loong lies, trapped within the currents of life's ties. Soaring high, golden lining arise, fate's trials from which none can hide. The plan he had was simple. Since the old man could foresee destiny, he would surely sidestep misfortune. By staying with him, he believed he could elude all danger. After his brothers each fled to distant realms, he transformed into a Loong pattern on Yuan's robe. For the next 100 years, he followed the old man across the vast lands, watching him decipher omens and foretell futures. But what good did his words change? Most in their hubris fell into the same snares. Whenever this occurred, the old man would seek refuge in drink. By fortune's grace, he possessed a gourd that brewed its own wine, and thus, he often drowned his sorrows in a self-spun stupor. In his drunken haze, the old man would often converse with the shadows. At times, he would mutter wistfully, "What use is it to see through the game if you cannot play it? And if you do not enter the game, what is the use at all?" At other times, he would be spirited and cheerful, exclaiming, "With life and death are predetermined, so why not be bold and give it a try?" Occasionally, he would speak with a heavy heart. What's done shapes what's to come. How many can truly defy destiny? And sometimes he would sigh and question, if you could predict where you would die and deliberately avoid it, could you really escape? The Loong often wondered if these words were meant for him, but since the old man never exposed or drove him away, he assumed the old man was just rambling in his drunkenness. As time went on, these words gnawed at his heart, leaving him torn and unable to decide whether to leave. A poem can be heard when we approach each of the Loongs. For what deed must his head be hung for all to see? For what deed must the waters they governed roam free? For what deed must all matters not know how to be? For what deed must mercy's hand so woe upon thee? In Journey to the West, the Monkey King, Sun Wukong, obtained his Ru Yi Jingu Bong, his iconic staff, from the Dragon King, Aourworm. At some point in the journey, Wukong sought the Dragon King's help to defeat the demon Red Boy, who captured Tanzhen. The Dragon King provided heavy rain, but it was ineffective against the Red Boy's fire. Despite the setback, the Dragon King continued to support Wukong, helping him with rainmaking. The journal entry for the Black Loong states, "The young man said, 'I have heard of the Loong King's plight, a grievous injustice indeed. Is it for his sake that you find yourself in such reduced circumstances?' Seeing he was no mortal, the Loong Prince said, 'Precisely. I have no wish to meet my end upon the Loong slaying terrace.' I asked a fortune teller, and he said, 'If I hid well and kill some westbound monkey, I may yet atone for my misdeeds and restore my honor.' The young man here is the Yellow Wind Sage. I say this because the journal entry for the Black Loong describes the young man as, "Then came a day when a young man arrived, clad in a midnight hue, with a necklace of moon pale stones around his neck. The fortune teller is Yuan, the gourd NPC. I say this because it is mentioned in the Red Loong's journal entry. Following the journey west, rewards were given based on merit, but only the Loong princes alone awaited judgment, heightening their anxiety. They sought out Yuan and asked him for a sign of their fortunes. The signs showed, the Loong lies hid, not a time for action, which became a thorn in their hearts. Basically, after Journey to the West finished, all had been rewarded except for the 4 Loongs, and it was the gourd NPC who told them to hide. After we defeat Yellow Loong, he states, our sire's head was hung when he defied the Celestial Court. A sire is the male parent of an animal. Yellow Loong further states, we dreaded the Jade Emperor's wrath and pleaded Master Yuan to help us abscond from our waters, but he warned us, we might hide for a time but not forever. In the end, someone will come to claim our lives. He had more to say, sires to sons, we are destined to die for the righteous cause. I trust him, yet I won't obey. May your path not, once more, be a mere thread in their grand design. The dragon leaves the gourd NPC's body and the gourd NPC says, all 3 of your brothers have been claimed. If not now, when will you reunite? Destiny repeats itself, always. Why not cast the die once more? Now in Journey to the West, Lingji Bodhisattva helped Wukong defeat the Yellow Wind Sage. Lingji Bodhisattva threw down his flying dragon staff, which is the golden Loong staff in game, and it turned into a golden dragon. The golden dragon threw the Yellow Wind monster onto the stone. After a puff of smoke dissipated, the monster turned into a yellow marten. The in-game description for the golden Loong staff also confirms this. A golden Loong emerged, bearing its 8 fearsome claws, then lunged at the Guai to snatch it up. The gourd NPC has been scheming to ensure that the 4 Loongs meet their end at the hands of the Destined One. His plan was to unite their remnants to forge the legendary golden Loong staff. The staff, once a powerful weapon in Sun Wukong's journey, would be reclaimed and serve us once more in our quest. Bad nose, crooked mouth, sharp fangs, poisonous and thick, check the ears, cut the forehead, and the face has 8 eyes and ugly appearance. Long ago, a woodcutter lived deep in the hills. One day he went down to the market fair and saw a puppet show. He loved it and yearned to see it again. One day, as he cut wood, he heard shouts of glee in the mountains. He followed the sounds and saw a mob of Yao Guais reveling together. Despite his fear, curiosity urged him to climb a rock to watch from afar. The Guais were gathered in a circle, watching an acrobat show. Too far to see well, the woodcutter could only discern a red-clad Guai, whirling twin blades in dazzling spins and flips. Entranced, the woodcutter crept closer. He saw the acrobatic Guai had legs tied behind its back, strings dangling from its feet. In a flash, he knew it was a puppetry trick. He climbed a large tree for a clearer view. The Guai had an ugly comical face. To the woodcutter, this spectacle was even more amusing than the finest plays at the market fair. He watched, spellbound. A chill on his neck jolted him out of the reverie. Reaching up to check, he found his fingers coated in green spittle. Looking up in horror, he was greeted by a myriad of eyes staring down at him. There, in the treetop, dangled a violet spider, its legs threaded with silk, tugging the distant puppet Guai to and fro. The woodcutter yelped and fell from the tree. At that, the spider paused, and the gathering of Yao Guais turned at once to glare at him. Stricken with terror, the woodcutter fled, and upon returning home, fell gravely ill. No remedy could ease his suffering. He wasted away and soon died. Can you discern the outer guise? Who cares when hidden from our eyes? When hung up high, what use retains? A puppet's dance its fleeting gains. Tales told of Zhu's estate in Webbed Ridge, the ancestral home of the wealthy textile family in the kingdom of Zhuzi. Rumors claimed that the estate housed a vast amount of gold and jewels, but those riches were never found. In the kingdom lived 2 thieves, who called each other brothers. The elder, a broad and forthright soul, the younger, a handsome and clever spirit. Fleeing a warrant, they sought Zhu's estate in the mountains as their next target as well as their hideout. For days they scoured the hills, their rations spent and their hope lost. Weary and famished, they chanced upon a tea hut. The young thief called out, "Let's rest there, brother." The elder replied, "We've seen no one for days. How could there be a tea hut?" But driven by hunger, the young one hastened toward it. The elder chased after him, pleading, They tussled until they entered the hut. Crude and dirty, it had rough log tables and stone stools. There were no patrons inside, only a hunchback old man with a cane brewing tea. The young thief asked, "How do you sell tea here with no one around, old man?" The old man pointed to a dim village behind the hut. "This humble one lives in the hilltop village. This hut serves but to eke out my living." He then served 2 bowls of thick, strange-smelling brew. The young thief reached for one, but the elder stopped him and asked the old man, "Do you know of Zhu's estate?" The old man grinned. "It lies within the village. Drink your tea and I shall guide you there." The young thief beamed, but the elder grew warier. He snatched the bowl from the young one. "I shall try it first." With that, he downed it in one gulp. No sooner had the tea hit his belly than he collapsed, writhing in agony. The young thief turned to the old man, only to witness his true form revealed as a hunchbacked, crane-wielding creature, its body entangled in silk. Lifting his eyes, he saw a colossal spider perched in the rafters, tugging the strands to prompt the bug to tap its cane with a resonant ting-ting. At this signal, the stone stools shifted and unfurled their legs. They became little stone spiders. They spat silk at the elder thief to entangle him. At this sight, the younger thief turned and fled, as if he had not heard his brother's pleas for help. When night falls deep, his light shines down, summoned in the yin, suppressed in the yang. Like harvesters hastening before the dawn, he reaps with his blade, and souls are gone. The insect guais loathed patrolling after dusk, as their instinct to chase after light made the nighttime perilous for them. But luck favored them when a tribe of pale-faced yakshas from the west of the place, having traversed the world, chose to settle at the webbed ridge and volunteered for the night watch. A task the insect guais were only too happy to relinquish to these newcomers. The yakshas are proud and fierce by nature, turned into feral Yao guais, yet they still clung to their old ways in the days they were revered. They kept to their own with lanterns lit from dusk to dawn, and rarely mingled with the insect guais. To the latter, they were a curious sight with their merriments and banter that paid no heed to hierarchy or status. Yet, what puzzled the insect guais most was the yaksha's bond, close-knit in joy, yet they'd often erupt into disputes and hurl sharp words with no restraint. One night, a quarrel broke out during an idle chatter among 4 yakshas on patrol, and their ruckus noise woke the insect guais. "Why must you carry on as thus?" The insect guais rushed to mediate, persuading them, arguing one moment, chumming the next. "Why not treat each other with proper respect like we do?" In an instant, the quarrel ceased, and in union the yakshas retorted. "You are mistaken," one spat. "Only through open discourse we grow," another chimed in. "Exactly, when we air out our disagreements, it only makes our bond stronger," a third added. "Indeed, by having each other's backs, we've made it through a lot of tough times. Our harsh words don't mean any harm." The last concluded, "Unlike you insect guais, we hide no secret grievances under the guise of harmony." With that, arm in arm, they departed, leaving the insect guais to dismiss the exchange with bemused eye rolls. Slender legs of verdant sheen, each arm wields a sickle keen. Misty woods are his home so true, he cares for youth like me and you. During the reign of the greatest emperor of Han, there was a village called Bath. From within its mountains a hot spring flowed, reputed to preserve youth and vitality. Nobles flocked to it from far and wide. One day, the Marquis of Lecheng came to visit his 6-year-old son. The young lord caught a little grasshopper and wanted to keep it as a pet, so he tore off its wings and trapped it in a teacup. That night, the Marquis was visited in his dreams by a man clad in green. "Your child has imprisoned mine," he pleaded. "We are both fathers. I beseech you, help my little one." The next morning, the Marquis summoned his son and inquired about what happened. The boy, who feared his stern father, only provided vague replies. Thus, the full story remained elusive to both. That night, the green-clad man revisited the Marquis's dream. With twin swords at his waist, he warned, "If you don't return my son, you'll never see yours again." The Marquis woke with a start and rushed to his son's bed, only to find it empty. Servants scoured the village but found no trace. Only the young lord's page remembered the bug catching. He rushed to the study, found the overturned teacup, and gently released the grasshopper onto the grass. By noon, the young lord returned home safely, yet his hands were red and swollen, and he couldn't stop weeping. When questioned about the events of the previous night, he sobbed, "I dreamt of a man in green, a great jumper. He carried me on his back and hopped a few times. Then I didn't know where I was. He scolded me for harming others and struck my palm with his sword 20 times. When asked how he came back, he was unable to answer, overwhelmed by fear. Alas, it is said that all beings love their young, a truth that spans the world. Even Yao Guais, it seems, are no different. In the late years of the Han, the hot spring and bath suddenly dried up. Insect guais sprouted in the hills, so the villagers moved down the mountain. A decade or two later, the area came to be known as the Webbed Ridge. Fly through the flowers and willows to shoot hidden arrows. Flap your wings and ride the crooked wind. It is difficult to achieve good deeds with small wisdom, and 2s or 3s block the way. There was a Dragonfly Guai who loved archery. His mother saw his gift and used her connections for an opportunity to have him training under the Yao Guai king of the land. To the king, the Dragonfly Guai seemed like a diligent and talented student. He drilled hard each day and served his master with great respect, always at his master's beck and call. At times he'd be practicing outside, but at a single command from his teacher, he'd appear at once. The king had doubts, but considering the dragonfly's swift wings, the king dismissed his suspicions. One day, the king taught him how to imbue his bolts with greater power. Wait for the arrowhead to glow, then release. The Guai swore he'd remember, but when tested that afternoon, he couldn't recall anything. The king assumed he just hadn't grasped the lesson and explained it once more, but the next day he had forgotten it again. This pattern continued. The Yao Guai king flew into a rage and set to punish the Guai. The Guai fell to his knees and pleaded, "Mercy, master, I have brothers. Each of us knows only a portion of the lessons. That's why I can't answer." At this, scores of identical Dragonfly Guais emerged, all kneeling and bowing non-stop. Offended yet tickled by this revelation, the king demoted them all to lowly patrol guards and taught them no more. Alas, while petty schemes might seem perfect at first, earning praise and favor, they also sow the seeds of trouble. When the truth is revealed, one faces ridicule and brings ruin upon themselves. When faced with traps, one must pass the test. When fortune smiles, do know when to rest. If a man of great will must vent his zest, trade deeds for fame and rank with the best. A young man from the village of Shaded Heights served at the county yamen, running errands for the local government. The magistrate despised him and hindered his advances on every turn. One day, the magistrate learned of a Yao Guai haunting the village of Langzi. He sent the young man to investigate alone and hoped he'd never return. Aware of the magistrate's ill intent, the young man accepted the task without hesitation. He chose not to beg for his life in this. As he entered the desolate, eerie village, he was overcome with regret. But as night fell and without knowledge of the mountain paths, he had no choice but to stay. He found a less dilapidated house with intact eaves, barred all doors and windows, and lit a lamp to steel himself for a long night, planning to depart at first light. Fear gripped him at midnight, so he practiced his swordplay to calm his nerves. After a while, a deep voice arose from the darkness above the rafters. "I am a Yao Guai of this ridge. I meant to kill you, but with your fine swordsmanship and the official blade, you must be a yamen runner, yes?" The young man was startled, but needed to voice his vows. He shared his ordeal with the Yao Guai and drew sighs of empathy. The Yao Guai said, "I too was once an imperial guard, but a treacherous court official cursed me into a beetle to scrape by in these hills. I long for death, but I still wish to pass on my sword skills to someone worthy. Now if you're willing to learn my skills, I offer to teach you." The young man dared not refuse. As he agreed, a beetle, over 3 meters tall, descended from the shadows. Its neck bore a thick carapace like a general's helm. The beetle wielded twin blades with a steadfast and forceful style that suited the young man's disposition. Overjoyed, the young man practiced with the beetle by the fading lamplight till dawn. As they parted ways, the beetle said kindly, "The world these days is full of those lacking talent and virtue, and ascending through flattery. Why tangle with them and sully yourself? Aim higher. A man should carve his own path." With a hearty laugh, the beetle left. This encounter changed the young man. He resigned from his position at the yamen and enlisted in the border armies. His superb swordsmanship elevated him to the rank of general. Leading the troops against foreign foes, he won victory after victory and became a famed commander. Summer turns to winter, spring returns to autumn. My body is wasting time and gradually becoming old and ugly. I know my white hair has been exchanged for fame, and my stubborn and arrogant character has burdened your life. Unlike the bee, wasp, hornet, katydid, cockroach, grasshopper, and dragonfly, the adopted sons of the spider ladies, the Beetle Captain earned his rank through his own valor. Perhaps this was what made him stubborn, quick to anger over slights to his status. He often quarreled with the lesser Guais over matters of words and etiquette. They called him arrogant and overbearing behind his back, disliking him all the more. One day, a petty dispute drove him to brandish his twin sabers at the lesser guards. The Beetle Commander chanced by and pulled him aside. You think your deeds and skills command their respect? But know this, rank has no bearing on the actions of others. What would happen if you measured your worth by the regard of everyone? When stone spiders show you disrespect, you think that makes you their inferior. The captain retorted, You're a commander, thus none dare offend you. But I'm a minor officer. If I don't assert myself, those lesser ones will scorn me even more. The commander shook his head. If they treated you with greater deference than me, would that make you my superior in practice and skill? Nay, for I have observed that those who clamor most for respect often receive the least of it. What became of the Beetle Captain? Alas, he remained as he was, as one's nature could not be easily altered. It was said that he continued to contend with all who crossed his path, until at last he was never to be seen again. Small and humble a spider I be, yet in stone I adorn, with comrades in peril beside me. In the olden days, a lesser Beetle Guai in the webbed hollow rose to the rank of captain through sheer prowess. But the promotion swelled his ego, and he lorded it over the others till they shunned him, much to his ire. Upon a day of rest, the Beetle Captain found himself bereft of friends to squander the hours with, and thus roamed the cave alone. He beheld a stone from which long and slender legs sprouted forth. As it turned out, the stone held a spider stirring from slumber. These spiders, burdened with stones upon their backs, moved in a slow, clumsy manner. The captain, beset by a foul mood, kicked one over and laughed at its plight as it failed and struggled to right itself. With each attempt it made to stand, he flicked it down again. After who knows how long, crisp raps echoed from the depths of the cave. Soon hordes of stone spiders marched out of the dark. Seeing the threat, the captain drew his weapons and charged into the midst. The spiders showed no fear. They hurled stones, spat silken venom, rammed and butted. They drove the captain into a rage, and he spun his twin blades in a killing frenzy amidst the spiders. As he cut them down with zeal, a flicker of lantern light neared, followed by a playful voice. You fool, you think you can slay every spider in the webbed hollow alone? Come with me, I'll take you to play under the peach blossoms. The Beetle Captain lifted his gaze to behold a maiden of unsurpassing beauty. His heart stirred, and he followed her at once. Henceforth he was seen no more. One old Guai mused, to slay spiders within their lair is but to seek death itself. In foreign lands it toils and spins, weaving cocoons, its work begins. Unable to transform and soar, it falls into the net once more. From the southern slopes of Mount Huai, one can gaze upon the radiant splendor of Mount Kunlun, its brilliance stretching for miles, exuding an awe-inspiring grandeur. On Mount Kunlun, there exists a creature called the Tuluo. It resembles a sheep but has 4 horns, and is known to devour humans. Another creature, known as the Chinwan, looks like a bee but is as large as a mandarin duck. Its sting is lethal to birds and beasts, and it can wither trees with the mere touch of its venom. King Mu of Zhou once had the fortune to visit Mount Kunlun. He toured its magnificent palaces, tasted various celestial herbs and delicacies, listened to sweet music performed by beautiful celestial maidens, and saw many wondrous mythical beasts. When the celestial maidens presented gifts to King Mu, he refused, but pointed to the mythical beasts in the garden and asked, "May I take one of these extraordinary creatures back with me?" The celestial maidens replied, "The beings of Kunlun drink from the celestial moat and feed on celestial herbs. Even if you take them back to the mortal realm, they would lose their form and abilities. It is better to not take them away, for if they transform, we cannot predict what calamities they might cause." The world is full of hustle and bustle. How much money can you make from all the hustle and bustle? Will you be caught in the trap of heaven and earth and be entangled by the thread of chance? In the kingdom of Zuzi, a curious tale prevailed. No matter how many kings came and went, the Zhu family of the royal weaving office never relocated. They wove a fabric known as celestial silk, gleaming as moonlight, light as cloud. Nobility and merchants alike clamored for it. The city's weavers seethed with jealousy, but none could replicate it. Over time, whispers spread that the Zhus owed their skills to a jade shuttle, bestowed by the red-clad Immortal. One weaver was convinced that obtaining the shuttle would also secure his fortune. On a deep, dark night, he sneaked into the Zhu's workshop outside the city walls during the second watch. The Zhus were rich enough to have their workshop sprawled wide and vast. In the deed of night, not a soul was in sight. The weaver crept through the yards of draping silks when a pure white light fell upon the center of the drying racks. The moon dimmed, and darkness swallowed all but that single, shining pillar joining earth and sky. The weaver stumbled toward it and discovered the pillar of light was made of countless strands of silk. Two monstrous silkworms were spinning these strands into cocoons and hanging them on the drying racks. The cocoon's hooked feet grabbed the silk strands and passed the jade shuttle back and forth, weaving the exquisite fabric. Dazed, the weaver became fixated on the shuttle, convinced that owning it would endow him with the same power. But the cocoons impaled him with their sharp hooks in a blink of an eye. As he lay dying, he saw the worms crawling towards him. They carried him into the pillar of light and wrapped him, a luminous cocoon. Fairy mountains, clouds and waters are connected to the horizon, and home is nowhere to be seen. Holding a stick, I walk far into the dangerous nest and enjoy the white snow and yellow buds. Long ago, a mountain village sat on a ridge teeming with insects. Strange things kept happening, so the villagers all moved out, leaving it a deserted village. In the village below lived a young man. His mother had died and his father was a poor wastrel who paid him no mind. The villagers looked down on him and often abused him. He felt he couldn't endure such disdain, so he fled to live in the abandoned village. Little did he know, the village was claimed by a swarm of insect guais. As soon as the young man reached the ridge, the Yahu Guai seized him. He didn't fight back, as a deep-rooted death wish, stemming from a life without attachments, had long infested his heart. Seeing his resignation, the insects didn't harm him. Instead, they provided him shelter in a dilapidated shack. That night, a middle-aged Daoist brought him food and clothing. I heard you have nowhere to go, so I brought you some things for daily use. If you don't mind, take me as your master and stay here. I can teach you practices for ascension. The youth hadn't been cared for in so long. He eagerly donned the Daoist robe and performed the rites to acknowledge his master. From then on, he lived and trained with the insect guais. They spent their days dining and walking together, and at night they slept side by side. One day, a scholar barged into the young man's room. I've just escaped from the Yahu Guai's lair. They had trapped me in a cocoon sack, and I'm unsure of their intentions. I am fleeing this place. You're human, you should come with me. The young man shook his head. I'm content here. Why should I leave? The scholar grew angry. Because they're Yahu Guais and you're human. Even if they don't harm you, staying with them long enough will turn you into a Yahu Guai as well. You're right, the young man said as he grabbed his staff and knocked the scholar to the ground. But even if I turn into a Yahu Guai, I'll do so gladly. The scholar deemed that the young man was past saving. Gritting his teeth against the pain, he crawled out the door and fled alone. To seek the Tao, he journeys far. With steadfast heart, he finds the gate. In the depths of sword skills, he glimpses roots of ascensions innate. Every 10 years, the Temple of Yellow Flowers opens its doors to recruit disciples. One day, a newly admitted young Daoist discovered that the disciples focused on innate practice were divided into 3 groups based on their skills. One group used staffs, another used fly-whisks, and the third used swords. The young Daoist observed them closely and noticed that the disciples who used staffs and fly-whisks were also responsible for various chores around the temple and had less favorable living conditions. In contrast, the disciples who used swords only needed to focus on their training, and they were even privileged to receive daily guidance from the master. The young Daoist secretly consulted the senior disciples and found that the sword disciples were also the quickest to achieve enlightenment and ascension. However, Becoming a disciple of the sword group was no easy task. It required passing a rigorous examination by the master, and only those deemed to have the highest potential were given the opportunity. The young Daoist visited each senior disciple, noting down the questions the master had asked them in the past, and made thorough preparations. Eventually, he succeeded in his endeavor, winning first place. The master personally tied his hair into a top knot and bestowed upon him a sword. From the moment he joined the sword group, he woke up early every day to train under the supervision of the commander Beetle. In the afternoons, he strengthened his ki under the master's guidance. Though the life was monotonous and arduous, he was very content. After more than a decade of rigorous cultivation, the disciples of Sword Group finally earned the master's approval. The master informed them that their skills were now proficient enough for them to enter the mountains for secluded meditation. If they were fortunate enough, they could achieve their ascension. Swallowing pills to hasten flight, in tainted streams he shares the blight. Better to seek the straight and true, than in the crooked paths pursue. The disciples who practiced swordsmanship in the temple had been training under their master for a long time. Since joining the group, they had all harbored the wish to attain ascension, diligently practicing their skills with great perseverance. One day, the master finally informed his disciples that after years of rigorous training, their skills had become proficient. He told them that they could now follow him into the mountains for a secluded meditation. If they were fortunate, they might achieve ascension and become immortals. The disciples were overjoyed and eagerly packed their belongings to follow their master into the mountains. The master led them using a teleportation technique to a breathtakingly beautiful mountain. The mountain was rustling golden leaves, presenting a scene of crisp, refreshing autumn weather. At the mountain's peak there was a hamlet where they set down their belongings. The master then led them along a path behind the hamlet to the summit. There they saw strands of silk hanging in the air, with one end suspended in the mountain mist and the other reaching high into the clouds. Destination unknown. The master said, "This is the celestial ladder to the immortal kingdom. Hundreds of years ago, your senior brother ascended to immortality from this very spot." With that, he handed each of them a peculiar object of a violet color and said, "This is a pill to aid your ascension. Quickly, my disciples, consume it." The disciples, filled with excitement, immediately swallowed the larvae-like object. A few hesitated, only to see a terrifying and disgusting scene. The disciples taking the pills had transformed into flat-headed fleshy worms. Horrified, they questioned their master, shaking. The master shook his head and sighed, "When the opportunity arises, your courage fails, which makes you unfit to become immortals." Before his sigh had ended, the disciples who were transformed into worms lunged at them. The wide robe and crane cloak flutter in the breeze. Why compare the righteous with the unrighteous, please? Praising virtues and merits disturbs the sweet dream. Whisking dust and sweeping earth disrupts the serene theme. In Petfall Hamlet lived a Daoist. He had taken his vows last and was the youngest, and thus the Grandmaster doted on him. He too was glad to wait on the Grandmaster at all times. If the Grandmaster extended a hand, he served tea. If the Grandmaster lifted a foot, he removed his shoe. He swatted flies, fanned the breeze, made the bed, and tidied the covers. Quick and thorough in his duties, the Grandmaster favored him greatly. His fellow disciples burned with jealousy, but they couldn't stoop to such fawning. They could only speak ill of him behind his back and bully him to vent their ire. One day, the Grandmaster held a test to assess his disciples' learning. When it was the turn of the youngest, he decided to be lenient with him. He only asked him to recite a passage from the scripture of Dao Di Jing. The young disciple put on a smug face and chanted in a loud, clear voice. The Tao produced 1, 1 produced 2, 2 produced 3, 3 produced all things. The other disciples had long awaited this moment, and their wish was finally granted. They roared with laughter and even stole glances at the Grand Master to see his reaction. The Grand Master, furious, stormed off in a huff. The other disciples then warned the young one, "You've committed a grave blunder and incited his anger today. Don't dream of learning any solid skills from him now." After that incident, the Grand Master shunned the youngest disciple, but then he found he had no one to wait on him properly. Over time, he reminisced about the young disciple's attentiveness. Before long, the disciple was summoned to serve him again. But when he saw the disciple's disinterest in Daoist learning, his aversion returned. One day, the young disciple implored the Grandmaster to teach him some skills, and the Grandmaster took the fly-swatting, fan-waving motions the boy did each day and made them into a set of moves. Who knows if this was meant as sarcasm? In the end, he taught the boy those moves and wind-wielding techniques, and that was all the boy could hope for. Pine, bamboo, plum grant him a blue hue, yet hearts of jackals, tigers, and leopards he possesses true. Collecting herbs from mountains and streams, no desire to aid the world, lost in selfish dreams. In the old days there was a Daoist temple at the foot of Purple Cloud Mountain. An ascetic Daoist nun, worn from her travels, sought shelter there one night. The temple nuns, moved by her devotion, offered her hot water and fresh clothes. As she bathed, the nun heard a sound from the rafters. Without showing any sign of alarm, she put on her robe and nonchalantly picked up her fly-whisk. With a gentle flick, the whisk stretched and coiled with her motion, snaking up to the rafters and seizing a Yao Guai. Alerted by the commotion, the temple nuns rushed into the room to investigate. On the ground crouched a snake Guai with green scales, unfazed by its capture. It seemed that the nuns had been its prior victims, now taking turns to scold it. The snake Guai looked at them with contempt and puffed out its cheek to spew green venom in every direction. Anyone struck by even a drop collapsed at once, writhing in pain. As the Guai had no remorse, the nun took out a wispy golden needle, prepared to destroy it. Only then did the snake show fear. It pleaded at once, "I'm just a lesser herbalist Guai from the mountain, and my basket outside is the antidote for them. Please, will you spare my life, immortal lady?" Hearing its sincere plea, the nun granted it mercy. The Guai rummaged in its basket and handed some small white pellets. "These are the leaves of the pearl tree. They are rare in the mortal world and can cure all venoms." It fed one to each Daoist nun, and they recovered at once. After that, the temple always had tree pearls on hand, and many afflicted by venom came here to seek aid. But the high cost of a tree pearl meant many, unable to afford it, had to face the toxin's fatal outcome. A head so large, a tail so thin, 7 feet long, a patterned form, electric eyes, fierce and strong. With tiger stripes it boasts with pride, yet beneath its head a strange guise hides. In the mountains there was a tiger with a strong desire for the Daos. He traveled across high mountains and great rivers, seeking a Daoist temple to practice. However, his Daoist affinity was thin, and he couldn't find a master willing to accept him until he reached the Webbed Hollow, hoping to become a disciple under an accomplished immortal. At first, the immortal master disdained him for being a mere tiger, unlike his other disciples, and refused to see him. The tiger knelt outside the mountain gate for several days without rising. The immortal master, sensing his sincerity, gave him a chance and accepted him as an outer disciple. Unexpectedly, the tiger had no steadfastness. After the initial fervor, he didn't put in the effort. The immortal master advised him, one's practice relies on oneself, not the master. But the tiger couldn't grasp this, and was punished to guard the mountain at Forest of Ferocity. Feeling resentful, the tiger became even lazier, spending his days lying idly under a tree and cursing his master to pass the time. One day, while half asleep under the tree, complaining about his master, he suddenly heard a soft sigh and felt something slip into his mouth. Startled, he sat up, but there was no one around. He retched for a long time, but couldn't expel anything, thinking it was just a dream. After some time, the tiger's neck became long and thin, and he could no longer speak. He diligently patrolled Hollow Forest every day. People whispered among themselves. He started his Daoist practice with enthusiasm but ended poorly. The master must have punished him, which is why he looks like this now. From now on, we'd best be careful. Amidst the lush leaves embrace, free from the dust of life's race, branches side by side they stand, their pursuit as firm as land. Once a wealthy scion, seeking the path of the immortals, abandoned his family fortune and retreated to the mountains for solitary practice. Accustomed to being served, he struggled alone and often faltered in basic chores. One day, while washing clothes, his basin drifted away. He sat by the river and wailed aloud. Suddenly, from the rustling trees, a young and beautiful woman glided down to him. She landed before him, inquired about his plight, and consoled him, saying, "Your devotion has moved the spirit of these cypresses such as me. You have my aid." She would prepare his meals, launder his clothes, and always leave as silently as she came. Yet the boy's heart harbored other thoughts. He said to her, "Since you care for me so, why not join me in practice as Daoist partners, and harmonize yin with yang?" Enraged by his audacity, the woman sharply rebuked him. "Our practices take on different paths, and mine has been kept for a millennium. Why would I risk this practice because of you?" She left swiftly, but after many tearful pleas by the river, the boy was forgiven. However, within half a year, he broached her with the proposal again, persisting in his deluded fantasy. The woman, after pondering, said, "How can you speak of the practice of yin and yang with me before you see my true form? Follow me and you shall see." She led him deep into the woods and revealed a massive, gnarled cypress tree. She glided onto its canopy and disappeared. The cypress let out a mighty roar and rose from the ground. With a flick of power, it summoned the surrounding shrubs. Together, they encircled the boy, intending to teach him a lesson. Overcome with fear, he fled back to his home and abandoned his pursuit of Dao. In the ending animation for Chapter 4, Zhu Bajie, then known as Marshal Tian Ping in the Celestial Court, becomes infatuated with the white-haired goddess. As he pursues her, he encounters Spider Grandma, who falls for him. However, Zhu Bajie's heart is solely set on the white-haired goddess. When he finally catches up to her, he discovers that she has a lover. In a moment of weakness, Zhu Bajie is caught peeking, leading to his punishment. He is banished to the mortal realm and transformed into a pig. Unwilling to part with him, Spider Grandma follows, reincarnating as a spider. Later, during the pilgrimage to the west with Tanzan, the group passes through Pansy Ridge, where Tanzan is captured by the Spider Sisters. In a clever ploy, Zhu Bajie disguises himself as a catfish, jumping into the spring. In this encounter, he and Spider Grandma recognize each other, sharing a fleeting romantic moment. Sun Wukong ultimately battles the Spider Sisters and the formidable 100-eyed demon, ordering Zhu Bajie to slay the spider demons. However, unable to harm Spider Grandma, Zhu Bajie secretly allows her to escape. As the pilgrimage team moves on, Spider Grandma survives and gives birth to Zhu Bajie's daughter, the sixth sister. Bound by seals, the Spider Sisters remain tied to Chapter 4, leaving Spider Grandma at Pansy Ridge to grow old, waiting for Zhu Bajie and cherishing the memories they once shared. Now, I've seen some claims saying that the person with the moon goddess here is the Jade Emperor, though I have not been able to really find any solid proof that confirms this. I've seen claims saying that because Zhu Bajie saw the Jade Emperor having a love affair with the moon goddess, the Emperor banished Zhu Bajie in order to save his image, since a love affair is forbidden. But the Supreme Inspector's journal entry states that he reported Admiral Tian Ping and that led to his banishment. I think there are two possible scenarios that could possibly play out. One scenario is that the guy we see with the moon goddess might have been her husband, and Tian Ping was caught lusting over her. With the love affair being forbidden, the Supreme Inspector reported Zhu Bajie, leading to his banishment. Once in the mortal realm, he has a love affair with the Violet Spider. However, still haunted by the consequences of his previous actions, he ultimately decides to leave her behind, fearing the possibility of being caught once more. This internal struggle underscores the conflict between his desire and the weight of his past mistakes. Alternatively, the figure seen with the moon goddess could have been the Jade Emperor himself. After Zhu Bajie caught the Jade Emperor having a love affair with the moon goddess, the Jade Emperor, concerned for his own reputation, may have ordered the Supreme Inspector to banish Zhu Bajie. As the Supreme Inspector is devoted to serving the Jade Emperor above all else, it's plausible that Zhu Bajie was framed and silenced to protect the Jade Emperor's image. And there you have it, the lore and story behind Chapter 4.